call Alec Rowley to speak to and move Amendment 5594.1. Mr Rowley, 8 minutes or thereabouts.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In moving the amendment in my name, I would want to support the general direction of the motion, and I would hope that we can find some consensus in this Parliament this afternoon on this important debate. Scottish Labour welcomes a fairer Scotland for disabled people and the use of the social model of disability, which states that it is society which disables people and it is our job to remove those barriers. We also welcome the delivery plan's approach and actions. In that delivery plan, the Minister acknowledges the scale and extent of the change necessary for real transformation in the experience of disabled people that will require concerted action over this parliamentary term and beyond. This debate today is important, but it's equally important that we are able to be confident that the progress on the delivery plan is measured on a regular basis. Otherwise, the risk of not making that progress necessarily remains. I hope the Minister will answer this point in summing up. I note, for example, that on housing, the plan quotes the Chief Executive of Glasgow Centre for Inclusive Living, stating that accessible housing is the cornerstone of independent living. Without an accessible home, it is clearly impossible for many disabled and older people to live as equal citizens, to work, to play, to have relationships, to be active members of our communities, and all that follows from that. In other words, to do all the things that non-disabled people take for granted. I agree with that, but I have to say to you that I am less than convinced that the current approach from the Government to deliver on the promise of 35,000 social rented houses can deliver on this. Indeed, without any focused forward local delivery planning, I very much doubt they will deliver the numbers, never mind the kind of housing that will be required to deliver housing needed for a fairer Scotland for disabled people. Likewise, Enable Scotland point out that in this Learning Disability Week there are some key issues, not least in the area of education, where more than half of young people who have learning disabilities and/or autism spectrum disorders feel they are not achieving their full potential at school. Inclusion Scotland also point out that whilst the Scottish Government has provided £250 million to health boards to pass on to integration authorities to support social care, this has to be seen in the context of the cuts to local government budgets of over £500 million, which is likely to lead to further cuts in social care budgets. They also say Inclusion Scotland has frequently highlighted the crisis in social care, which has seen the focus moved to meeting only critical and substantial need. It can mean disabled people effectively being prisoners in their own homes, dressed, washed, fed and toileted, but unable to go out to meet their friends or family to take part in the social activities that most of us take for granted. So we need joined-up government, but we also need the resources to be able to deliver on the actions. And in education, that means more direct support for teaching and learning. It does mean more teaching assistants, and it means, I would suggest, the end to the cuts at the local level. The same is true for health and social care, where we know joint boards are struggling to balance the books and to meet the growing demands that are being placed upon them. So in all these areas, if we're actually going to deliver on this plan, we need joined-up government, and we've got to stop cutting local services. So in giving support to the plan, I do want to see more discussion moving forward on how the progress and the outcomes are going to be measured and monitored. For we should be clear, it is in the interest of disabled people to deliver on this plan, but it is equally in the interest of all of Scotland that we deliver. I hope we can agree that disabled people in Scotland make a huge contribution to Scottish society, and that said, it is therefore both despicable and unacceptable that over these last 7 years, the UK Government has ensured that disabled people have borne the brunt of Tory cuts on benefits and services. Borne the brunt. Not only has disabled people had to bear the brunt of those cuts, But disgracefully, it is the Tories who have contributed to the vile narrative that has vilified people with disabilities with divisive rhetoric like scroungers and shirkers. It is in this climate, Presiding Officer, record levels of disability hate crime has sadly increased and continues to increase. The latest report from the Centre for Welfare Reform demonstrates how the burden of cuts fall on minority groups with the greatest impact on disabled people.
Adam Tompkins.
The fact is exactly the opposite of what Mr Rowley just said. The current UK government is spending £50 billion on disability benefits, more than £6 billion more than the last Labour government spent. The money's gone up, not been cut.
Alec Rowley.
Simply not the case. Professor Tompkins is just simply ignoring the facts. The fact is that disabled people are bearing the brunt of the welfare cuts. It's just a fact, and you need to look at the evidence. The fact is that people are getting poorer. The last Labour government lifted millions of people out of poverty. The Tories in Westminster, supported by the Tories in this Parliament, are driving millions and millions more into deeper and deeper poverty. That's a fact. In this Parliament, I believe we must speak up in support of disabled people who are under attack and being driven further into poverty as a direct result of Tory government policy. We must demand a halt to the current programme of cuts and an independent assessment of the cumulative impact of the cuts on disabled people and other vulnerable groups. It is clear from the Tory amendment today that the Scottish Tories stand foursquare behind the attacks on the weakest, the poorest and the disabled. So no change there. You would think the findings of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission would embarrass the Scottish Tories into stopping the attacks on disabled people. But no, just the same old Tories, standing up for the few. However, as the Green Amendment, which was not taken today, pointed out, we do have power in this Parliament to start to address the worst aspects of the Tory attacks on disabled people. And I do say to the Minister, we need to hear more about what can be done and more specific timelines for the transfer and use of powers in Scotland. I know there are complex issues, but I say to the Minister, we must take the powers as soon as is possible, and we must begin to use those powers in the best interest of Scotland and the people of Scotland. We have had the consultation. We have established the principle that we must build a fairer and more dignified social security system. I look forward to the draft bill and to making the progress that needs to be made. Finally, Presiding Officer, I am calling on the Scottish Government here in Scotland to launch a nationwide benefits update campaign in partnership with councils and the third sector to ensure that all those people, the tens of thousands of people who are not getting the support that they need and are entitled to, should be getting that support. We need to do more, and we can do more in that area. Actions speak louder than words. In this area, we need actions. I move.